We will come back to John's Revelation in a couple of weeks. But this morning I'm sharing on a nudging from God that I found a great deal of joy in during the recent walk towards Whithorn recently. And I want to share in two of the postings from that open up the nudging a wee bit. But first let's give some shape to it biblically. The text we read from a moment ago is from Proverbs, which is often grouped together with Job and the Psalms and Ecclesiastes and the Song of Songs. Together they're known as the wisdom books. And they're called this because through much of them they are looking towards the patterns and the ways that God is speaking to us in the stuff that's around us. Through people, objects, nature. There is a psalm that opens up this approach beautifully. Psalm 8. Psalm 8 says this: "When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them, human beings that you care for them?" There are ways to look attentively to what is around us and seek to understand more of God, to let God speak to us through what is around us. And when this approach is in play, that is termed wisdom in biblical practice. An openness to what lies around us and listening and discerning the patterns and the ways of God. And for us, of course, such hearing of God is tuned to the life, death and resurrection of Jesus. But this attentiveness to what lies around us is at the heart of the commitment to wisdom that is shared in these books of wisdom. It is an attitude of openness to the world that lies around us. The reading from Proverbs 8 expresses why this openness matters. It pictures wisdom as a person formed before creation, a joyful presence alongside the Lord as the world is being made. As springs bubble up, as mountains are formed, as fields are set out, wisdom says, "I was there while all these things were being made," knowing the joy of this creation, joyful in the humanity that is made. And for Proverbs and for other wisdom literature, the aim is to know wisdom through being attentive to the world that is created, through its patterns, its life. Open up to it, letting it, what is around you, share what is its mark of God's hand. The picture in Proverbs is one of us making friends with wisdom so that we begin to see the patterns of God in his creation and what lies around us. There's a beautiful old Gaelic prayer written down in the early 19th century from Lewis that just embeds speaking with God with the things that lie around the one who is praying when he's getting up in the morning. It says this: "Thanks to you, O God, I have risen today, to the rising of life itself. May it be to your own glory, a God of every gift, and to the glory of my soul likewise. O great God, aid my soul with the aiding of your own mercy, even as I clothe my body with wool. Cover my soul with the shadow of your wing. Help me to avoid every sin and the source of every sin to forsake. And as the mist scatters on the crests of the hills, may each ill haze clear from my soul, O God." It's rooted in what this guy is experiencing, this man is experiencing. The one who is praying feels the wool of his clothing, the warmth of it, it's covering over, protecting, and it leads him to pray towards the covering of his soul under the shadow of God's wing. He sees in the mist scattered in the hills in the early morning a way to speak of clearing his soul, to live more fully in the light of God where the mist is drawn apart. And these words are beautifully rooted in just what lies around, the patterns and relationships of what is to hand as ways to turn to God and speak of him. And this is where the nudging from God came. I realised in walking these long distances, I say long distances, but I understand my daughter Abigail walked about 12 kilometres yesterday in Edinburgh in a shopping trip, more or less. And our mileage doesn't seem so great, Jim, does it? But there we go. In these long distances, it became easy to listen to God, express God, and understand God in the patterns and relationships that lie around. This isn't a new practice or understanding for me. Much of my doctoral thesis lies with committing to this sort of way of doing things, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But what was new in the walking was the ease of it, how easy it became to seek God, to speak of God in what lay around, and what was seen, and what was touched, and what was around, and the people around me, and the objects in the landscape. There was an ease to all of this that just said joy. I mentioned in postings and with others of joy. And I think so much of it lay in this awareness, this gift of openness to God in this moment. Through all that lay around in the changing landscape, to walk was to walk with God in friendship with wisdom, seeking to understand and hear. There's one stretch in Ayr, though, where it suddenly became very difficult to hear or be open to God. Just before the harbour area, I felt a very damaged place. And within my doctoral thesis, I tried to understand these different patterns of brokenness. That wisdom lay with discerning damaged patterns and let them speak to us creatively into hearing God. The passion to make new things can come from the patterns and relationships in God's creation that are damaged and broken in some way. And the work of the thesis lay in finding patterns in what lies around us, seeking to hear God's wisdom in the midst of what is good and what is damaged, so that we can make new again, make wisely with what lies around us. But the starting point and the nudging and the walk lies with wisdom, this open attentiveness to what lies around us, looking for patterns and relationships with God in the world. If I go to two of the postings, maybe from the walk, they open this up a wee bit more. If you could put the first slide in there of the pebbles on the beaches in there. And this is how I heard God speaking through stuff like this. I love every painful, happy moment of this walk. The sea is a constant today. Tones of blue across the sea, across Arran, up to the Isle of Bute, hazy blue skies. And pebbles matter. Different beaches, different pebbles washed by the same sea. The sights across on the beach around Heads of Ware, the constancy of the sea and the blueness. The tones shimmily different across Arran. Beautiful this water holds us together. Miles and miles of sand, easy walking. Can't get past the sense of difference holding together in the constancy of the sea and the colours, the differing pebbles, colours, stones, sands, the different beaches. And the gift of being with others, the one who sees the landscape in startlingly beautiful ways and holds it all together. And I gather pebbles to remember such moments. God, is easy to see God in what lies around. God holding us together in all the differences, holding us together by his constancy. And then the next day was a turning inwards. Next picture. Can I just say, I'm so proud of this picture. This is a new phone I had with a new camera on it, and I got close in on this, and that's one of the best pictures I've taken, I think. I'm delighted with that picture. It's total shines, isn't it? Love it. And headed over from Dunure Harbour, headed over boggy farmland and woodland. Everything became about the next step, where you put your foot, slow, difficult walking. And today has been about the small moments. Moments of red mushrooms startling in the woods, of the astonishing greenness in the forest, even with the autumnal colours coming, of the water dew across the grass. You could run your hand across the grass, pick up the dew, and it would just splash it over your face. It was delightful, wonderful. And you just think how God is in the midst of that and refreshing you in the moments. It's just this very great sense of, in a very ordinary landscape, or a hard landscape at times to walk, there were moments of startling beauty that came, that hold you in the everyday work of living and walking. There are gifts of moments, and again, I saw God in all of that. God gives us these gifts of moments in our everyday walking, everyday lives, gifts of moments that just lift us and hold us and carry us. There are ways to look to God in all that lies around us, an open attentiveness that I find overwhelming and beautiful. And in the walking, it became easy, where so often in our busy lives it becomes hard. And when we set up the postcards project, as we thought around our 100 years coming up next year, its purpose, the purpose of this postcards project, is to give us moments where that attentiveness to God is noticed. And you write it down in some way. And it's marked and gifted forward to those who will come after us. It's to live as a friend to wisdom. It's simply to be open to what lies around us and let God speak to us through it. We take so much for granted, but this is a way of living. A way of living that, for me, gives life to faith and to speaking for God now in these moments. It becomes easy to hear God. That's what struck me so much in this walking. It is easy to know God through what lies around. These nudges on the walk have been such a blessing. The postcard project seeks to open that up so we can all, just for a moment, see what is around us and let God speak in and amongst us. And to gift that on into a future generation. That's my hope. I find a gift of God in all of this, and I want you to share in the gift of these moments, to be open to what God's saying to you and what lies around you. And if something comes, if God speaks to you in some way, share it. That's the encouragement. Share it and pass it on to the next generation. That's what this project is about. If something comes, write it down on paper, or text it, or Instagram it to me, or whatever, WhatsApp it to me in some way, and locate it. Just say, this is where it happened. And you can draw a map. I'd love to see you draw a map, or a photograph, or whatever else. Just send that to me so we locate. This is where God said this to me, and I pass this on to the next generation to use as you will. These are gifts waiting for us and from God, and we want to pass them on to the next generation. And the Postcards Project is simply one way in which we can gather up how God is speaking to us and say to the next generation, the ones coming in the next 100 years, say, this is how God spoke to us. We give it to you. We pass it on. So I would love so many postcards from you. I've got a few already, and they're very good. But I love more. To hear how God is saying to us and speaking to us and saying, to those who will come, here's how God spoke to us. Shall we pray?